All right, welcome back to Beyond the Court with League One Volleyball, where we deep dive with some of the top coaches and leaders in volleyball and beyond. I'm your host, Courtney Thompson, and we all know that great coaches will challenge their athletes to find their best in all areas of their game, while also helping to inspire and motivate them in ways that go far beyond the court. Today we are very lucky to be joined by none other than Jason Watson and Tom Black, both former guests individually on the Beyond the Court podcast, but today we get to hang out with them together. Jason Watson, as you know, is the head coach at the University of Arkansas, and Tom Black is currently the head coach at the University of Georgia. Jason and Tom, you both are amazing humans, incredible minds in the game of volleyball, and most importantly, two of my favorite people to just get to hang out and talk shit with. So really grateful for you taking another hour to hang out with us. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having us. I don't know why you're doing this to yourself, but thanks for having us.
I know.
Let's wait till the end before we congratulate each other.
Just for all the listeners, I've already been getting roasted in our group text to even set this up. So here we are. Who knows what we're about to get into. But can you guys just share a little bit of how you guys have been hanging out as friends? You guys collaborated on a lot of stuff. Just a little background of how you guys got connected.
Well, Jason played for Carl McGowan, so he was, kind of in that tree. I was an outcast trying to force my way in. So I think I first met Jason when he was coaching. I emailed you when I was at UC San Diego and you were BYU. And Jason's got a pretty big emotional wall if you're on the outside. So he gave me a pretty curt Jason Watson response to. I remember I was asking you about setter-hitter connection even back then. And then I met Jason he was coaching Arizona State, hosting a GMS clinic. I think we became pretty fast friends. We've been pretty close for a long time, all through my LMU days and his ASU days, and at Arkansas. And just one of the best people I've ever met, and also a really brilliant mind. There's not many people that you can feel like, hey, as a friend, this is making my life better, and then in a profession, he makes me sharper, and that's what I've got in Jason. And that's the last compliment I'm going to give him for the rest of the hour. So.
That's awesome. See, wait, Tom, your first question to him was about setter-hitter connection? Like, you just went right to it?
I think it was, and he gave me this really coy, get off my lawn response, and then, probably took about 3 years before I talked to him again after that.
I love it.
That sounds about right, I think. That actually sounds about right. When I left Arizona State, I wanted Tom to get that job, He had an opportunity to come to Georgia, and I thought that was a great opportunity, much to my regret, So it turned out before he got to Georgia, we were doing okay against Georgia, and now it's quite upside down, actually.
It's pretty 50-50, actually.
It's quite upside down, but I think for me, I'm always trying to get a little bit better in this sort of thing, and the things that I think the lens in which Tom looks at the game is much different than mine, and so he challenges me quite a bit. And along the way, we have a pretty good time about it too, and so it's this interesting deal, right? Because hey, we're both trying to win matches in the SEC, and yet we're talking about our teams all the time, and so it's funny. I'm a better coach because I know Tom Black. I know that for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Wow, you guys are being so nice. That's awesome.
It's always
what is to pull on that? To pull on that a little bit. What is one thing you guys have? When people are like, oh, yeah, this book's amazing, or this podcast. Tom, I might have gotten this from you, but I'm always curious of, what behavior did it actually change? What have you actually taken from that? So my question to you guys is, Jason, what have you learned from Tom that you've shifted kind of in your coaching? And same question for you, Tom.
I'm going to answer that for him. If you're a middle blocker and you play for Jason, you've gotten at least 2 more sets because of me. Jason would be pumping the outside all game long. So whoever your middles are, they need to be thanking me for whatever set they got.
That is awesome. Listen here, middle recruits.
Yeah, thank me.
Yeah, I mean, our offensive philosophy has evolved a little bit. I think as we've shared, we're one of the few teams that uses our outsides, to open up our middles, and then once we've done that, we set the outside faster. Is what I think I shared in our message. But one of the things I've learned from Tom is to have this pretty holistic look at the group in general. That not everybody on your team is on your team for the same reasons, and then really to be able to explore and meet them where they're at. I think Tom's been at the forefront of me evolving in that space there a little bit. And certainly in the gym, being a lot more mindful on how athletes think about practice or what they're thinking during practice. I think he's got a really good handle on, where people are at, where learning and things like that. I'll tell you, one of the bigger impacts is I never spent much time worrying about serving. It wasn't something that was on my to-do list, right? It wasn't. And then we got lit up by Georgia, right, from the service line. Like, it was like the 4th of July. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, right? And so what I did was I went back and watched every server from Georgia. And I'm like, all right, hey, if we can't beat them, join them, And so we spent a lot more time in that serving space, But yeah, we got lit up badly. Like, it was, and the worst part about it was my AD was on that trip too, right? He came to Georgia, and we're like we're sending like 800 free balls over, and he's like, "Hey, are we ever going to be good?" And I'm like, "Maybe."
It's a tough day.
Yeah. Thanks, friend. That was really great.
Yeah. And here we are.
Well, I mean, serving wise, you got to give a ton of credit to Aaron Benny, my assistant. He spends all day on that or on recruiting. It's really nice actually to hear Jason say that. It's not something we talk about. Hey, how have I made you better? Tell me.
Yeah.
But
hey.
Yeah, exactly. I could spend all day talking about Jason. I will. Okay.
We got an hour.
He's kind of the foremost accelerant to my whatever improvement I get. I think I've accepted this point. I'm never gonna be able to comprehend all the data and put it into an actionable idea the way that he can. I mean, what he's doing with the setter hitter window is so profound, and it always cracks me up because every time I try to share it with people, they kind of nod their head, and I usually get something like, "Yeah, I do that too. I do that," and I'm like, But like what he's doing, with that, and at some point he's going to switch to something else, and I'm going to be equally dumbfounded. I'm going to probably think something like, "How did he think of that?" And then I'll probably think, "Why did he think of that?" And then while I'm thinking of that, he's found 20 ways to measure it, and then the thing that really knocks it out of the park is. This is something I couldn't do. I mean, he can communicate it in the most human, teachable, I believe in you way. I mean, just be around his players. Just feel the vibe of his team. I mean, they want it, and they know he's on their side. And I think it's really rare. I think it's really rare to be as brilliant in the scientific realm of this profession as he is, and then also have the heartbeat. I've just never seen it before. I mean, Carl McGowan, I would die for that guy, but I mean, warm and fuzzy, he was not, but and then I've seen, if anything, I think, one of the most common coaching profiles is kind of the warm relationship person who doesn't really get into the X's and O's too much, but Jason's really got both, and I'm incredibly envious, but I'm incredibly grateful. He's just really let me into it. I think he knows I'm never going to catch up to it. I think that's why he's so open with me. But I just love Jason Watson, and I love his mind, and I think he's one of the best coaches in the world. I know he is.
Hell yeah, I love this. Let's dive in there then, Jason. And would you be open to sharing about kind of what you've been thinking about the setter hitter window? How you think about it, how you teach it?
Yeah, and so it's a little difficult to do without some visual sort of stuff, but I'll give it my best go. And and I appreciate Tom sharing that and setting me up to fail completely with this question, right?
Whatever you say, I'm just gonna be exactly.
So, oh boy, here we go. So So I think we've got this setting window, and I think it's a little bit of an extrapolation from the work that Nina Puikkonen did for us at BYU, and then Joe Trinzi took it to a whole different level, you know. But if we look at setting on this XYZ axis, right? X is, you know, sort of the distance from the setter to the hitter, you know, along the net sort of thing. Y is height above the net, and then Z is off the net, right? The space between off the net, right? Because I think all three of those things are important, you know, and if we're looking at setters in terms of a tempo first and then location second, I don't think there's as big a gap between tempo and location as people say, you know, like we want tempo, but we also want location, right? You know, like you can't just be, it's not binary. So, and then distance from the net is a pretty big factor, I think, you know, and so we're measuring all three, and we're measuring setters in that space, and so we've got this, like, hey, it's window, ideal, and it's perfect. So this WIP is the thing, and that's where you hit all three of those, right? X, Y, and Z, WIP, and it's not realistic to think that a setter can do that 100% of the time. It's just not possible. Because the quality of the first ball pass has a pretty big predictor on what your WIP is going to be. So, but we think 2 out of 3 is pretty good. You know, we're trying to develop. Eventually, we're going to try and get to, hey, what's your WIP in phase? Like in system, it should be higher. Out of system, we'd like it to be this. You know, and so we're working on those type of things there a little bit, and exploring that space there a little bit. And so with that, we've also expanded into the hitters, where the hitters, hey, we want you to be in this window. We want you to be aware of what your window is too, you know, and you have the ability to create your own shot too, even if it's not in the right window for the setter. So where window is, I mean, I think that's everything that we do here, right? Is just centered around this window, right? It's just, I was talking to an athlete she's like, I talk to my setters about the window all the time. And I'm like, oh, that's great, you know. And she's like, yeah, but they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Welcome to pro volleyball.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. My bad. But and so I mean, it's the center of our program. Like everything that we do, we centers around this window and getting the ball into this window consistently.
And then the hitters just regulating that on timing? Like how do they have agency over?
Yeah, I mean, the hitters have some responsibility there, right? They have to have some consistent tempo into it, you know, like, hey, second step, right, when it's in their hand and things like that. But they also have a responsibility to know where their hand is or arm is. And we grade them too, right? Like, hey, we're hitting it too far in front, or we're hitting it behind us, we're reaching outside, those sort of things. And so one of the thoughts is, like, if both windows line up, then just go hit the heck out of the ball, and we don't care about EBs, right? Like, but if you're not in your window and the set isn't in your window, then that's the opportunity where you've got to find some creative solutions to maintain some advantage, right? You just don't get to go blast balls that aren't in the setting window and aren't in your hitting window. You don't get to go blast balls that way. And lots of people do that, right? They're like, you know, Hulk smash, you know.
Were you in our practice last night?
Yeah. And yeah, I wasn't. I was in mine, which was equally, we had moments.
Special.
But yeah, so it's this pretty relationship-driven thing where, and part of it, Court, I think, is that it gives the setter and the hitter actionable feedback too, right? Like, I mean, I think the worst thing the setter can hear is, hey, I need that a little bit higher. And you're like, yeah, I'll get that next time you get me a pass, right? Like, right? Hey, we're all working hard.
You're like contorted to try to save this ball. And they're like, hey, man, can you get it off a little bit? You're like, have you seen what I've been doing out here?
Like, sure. My bad. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Not that I remember that at all, but yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like a little bit higher. What is a little bit higher? You know, like. And so it gives them some actionable feedback that they can walk through.
I love what you, even what you said about your athlete that went on to play, because it points to the power of having a common language. Because I totally agree with setter hitter, with like so many things. I feel like the best teams I've been on it's like you speak another language, and it's so clear about feedback and the feedback loop and what's needed. It just makes sense. So, Tom, anything to add to that of how you've used this?
I mean, I don't think I can add to it. I mean, I'm learning just listening to him talk, but I can't say it's been at least 2 years of me asking him 5 million questions, and I'm still trying to catch up. But
remember that
it's
show
great
with
stuff
Tim
he's doing.
Allen and the neighbor Wilson? He'd like hear something
Where's
from
this
Wilson
going,
and then
Court?
go try
Where's
to
this going?
articulate it, and it was just like, what? Just
That's
imagine
me.
this.
I'm that guy. Yeah, for sure.
Is that a
Guys, so
compliment?
there's a
Like, is there a
window.
compliment?
You have one and you have one.
I love it. Yeah, I think I have accepted. I mean, this is, I guess, for all coaches, really important to learn, and then just as challenging, like, how do I make this my own? Because
Yeah.
I think I've come to accept, like, I just can't do it the way Jason does it, even if I wanted to, which I have wanted to. So how do I really understand what he's trying to do and take it in a way that's still me? And every coach is always wrestling with that. But well, I take it back. I think all of us should always be wrestling with that as coaches. But I think it's especially as your career goes on, it's pretty easy to get siloed.
Yeah. Jason mentioned your approach to serving at Georgia. I just think in general, this is it's interesting to see where coaches take this. So I'd be curious to hear from both of you at this point. What is your approach to serving, and maybe how do you train it day to day?
I'd say I really care about serving. I'd say Jason kind of cares. I think, I care about blocking, and Jason does not care about blocking.
So I care about serving because I lost to Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. Pain causes change.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
there you go.
Serving kind of came about, obviously, I think part of it's my background. I think there's some subconscious stuff going on. So my first head coaching job was at UCSD, and it might have just been obvious, or I might have done some study, but I just kind of came to the conclusion that, obviously we always say a lot at every level, if we're the best serving team, we're going to win. That's almost true. That's not completely true, but I was pretty convinced at the level I was at, if we are the best serving team, we will win all of D2. So I just really got into it. I think I've always had a bias towards serving, just kind of because that was my first head coaching experience, kind of all the way through. But also, it's kind of organic, just like with Aaron Benning and I, and just how we were trying to grow him and myself as a coach, and like where our coaching staff was, and he's recruiting a lot, so he was out of town. Like what's the flow? So we kind of got to the point where I just wanted to be the serving coach, and I thought there might be an opportunity there. There could be. I don't know if there's many programs where one coach is just coaching serving. So I thought, maybe we can mine a couple extra points out of that. And it just suited his personality too, because he's kind of like Jason with the window. Like, he goes way, way, way in there. So he's done a great job. So I think it was a combination of all those things, just like my past history, how to make our staff work best, like is there any chance to get an edge just in terms of how we organize our staff. Like, it's kind of all those things. And then fortunately, our results have been pretty consistent over the past few years, so we'll probably stay with it.
Here's how Tom changed us. Like, I got it specifically. I hadn't even thought about stuff. I hadn't thought about the sequence of when the toss occurs, and the importance of that in force generation. Hadn't even thought of that. Like, it wasn't even on my radar. And I listened to Tom. I think it was at a GMS clinic or something. I listened to Tom teach somebody who had never served, because that happens at GMS clinics, right? You get some people on different ends of their coaching career, sort of thing. And I watched him teach this person how to serve. Hey, I want a bow and arrow and stuff like that, right? But hey, move your hand so that you're tossing in front of your right shoulder, sort of thing. It's like, oh my gosh, right? That seems like such a maybe I should have always known that, right? But I didn't, and then I think the timing of the sequence, right? I think one of the things I've taken from Tom is, I think Tom has this really interesting way of looking at skills as a chain, right? Like, there's this progression to them and this chain. And I love that analogy that he talks about, like this chain with hitting and this chain with serving, right? And you don't want to break this chain, and maybe it's a kinetic chain or something like that. But but he has this way of talking about skills as a chain that don't break the chain, keep the chain going.
Yeah.
And so that was really kind of eye-opening for me. It's like, and I've seen him talk about hitting in that way too at a GMS clinic and things like that. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's a really, really nice way. It's a really, really good way to teach an athlete about, hey, this whole, everything matters, right? In this chain sort of thing. And so
the holistic approach to, the end result we all want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's really, really a good way to approach it, and so I've stolen that. I've never told anyone that I've stolen that, right?
That's
like
right.
I'm not giving him any credit in my gym, although my team will tell you that he's the only person I like, and so they'll tell you that.
I'm trying to get in there.
Yeah, they'll tell you that. They're more excited to see Tom than they are me when we play Georgia.
You still got 30 minutes to get in there, Court. You got to.
All right,
we'll see how this goes.
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Tom, along with the mechanics of serving and like all the stuff Jason just talked about with the chain, but what is the mentality you want your team to have at the service line? Because I think like that stat, I don't even know if this is true anymore, but it was like if you win the serve pass battle, you're likely going to win, I don't know, 80, 90% of your matches. And
like
then
70?
There's what is it now, 70?
Probably 70. Is it even 70?
In college?
High 60s?
And then there's what is the risk reward level that we're going for? Like, so how do you think about that?
I think you should get 100 coaches on here and ask like a quick fire thing. What's the risk reward ratio? You're gonna get like 100 different answers.
Yeah, that's why I'm curious. And I worked with Kevin Hambley at Stanford. He's, I think, an extreme on the other end. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that bothers me talking to serving about coaching is just how dogmatic we get about this is the and it's like I wish we were a little more open minded. Yeah, I don't know about the risk. I mean, there's definitely is a ratio. Maybe like fluctuates like a little bit. But just in terms of like identity, again, that's something like Aaron and I have worked together. But because serving is a closed skill, I mean, a couple things. There's no reason you're not a good server. There's just no reason, right? It's completely under your control. And because of that, and because of the impact it has on the game, we should probably have an identity around it. So, for us, it's a Georgia serve, but it could be an Arkansas serve or a USA serve or whatever. But I think there should be an identity around the serve because we have complete control over it. So, other than that, I mean, there's the stuff everybody talks about. You want to serve, you want to go flat, space, no spin. We want two out of those three, just like Jason was talking about with the window. But it's it's just the identity, and I think it gets in an interesting conversation too because so much of an athlete, kind of what Jason's talking about, just about the whole skill. And I think Jason, we did chain at the same time. I think you were talking to me about hitters, setters, and I was like, oh, it's like a chain. And you're like, yeah, a chain. And I think we just both said it at the same time. I think it was a simultaneous creation, but there's a chain with the coach and the player too, right? So I think that's the other thing about serving too. We can give no feedback, we can give too much feedback, or we can give just enough, but that's going to get mixed into the mentality of the player as a server, especially under pressure. We got to be really mindful of that. And I'm just saying that as like kind of a cool separate conversation if we want to get into it, just player-coach relationship and how they perform based on that. But all of that should be relating into what a Georgia serve is and is going to look at, and then hopefully gives us a quick reference point in practice, during the match, post-practice, and then a little bit of a loop from there.
Right on. Let's dive into that player-coach relationship. That's exciting. And it's interesting because there's just so many variables. I feel like this is why coaching is so hard and so beautiful because it's real time. There's so many different factors. It's like, how do you help someone in a moment? There's no right answer. And you can't control everything. So how do you, we could take that a million different ways, but initially, how do you guys think about it?
Serving is a really easy way, I think, to measure our feedback because it's so closed and there's so little noise. It's basically like they have their routine and they're going to serve, and I'm talking about practice, like the 10,000 serving practice reps you get. They're going to bounce the ball, do their routine, they're going to serve, and then they have whatever you're saying or not saying. So you kind of have like a really good guide of, especially if you're doing some drills in practice that are kind of testing it a little bit, whatever like pressure drills you're doing, you can really it's pretty observable what their mentality is. There's so, like, all the noise is out of it. But kind of turning it back into Jason, that was one thing that impressed me about the window is I do think his teams play really fearless. And the more that he and I are talking and I'm observing like what he's doing, like he's just really staying out of it in practice, like when it comes to the setter hitter window, because there is so much noise in there. And I think he's done such a good job defining it and measuring it with like really high level of repeatability. Like the players know what they're trying to do, and they know he's going to give them feedback when things are over about it. And they know that this drill is meant to measure it. So he can really stay out of it and let them play free. And when you see him in games, they're not thinking about it. They're not looking back at Jason, but there is clearly a defined thing that they're trying to do together. And I love that. And so I think serving is a much less noisy example. We can test it, like obviously if you're talking every time while someone's serving, you're going to be in that loop, and it's going to mess them up under pressure. If you're never talking, they're not going to have any guidance. So what's enough? Like what's just enough? How do I develop them as a server? How do I develop them as a competitor? Just enough, like you're talking about. And that's, it's a never ending process.
Yeah.
I think practice is like this cherished time, for me. Not a big fan of the matches, Court. I have to go to them. They make me go to them,
You don't look happy in those matches.
Yeah, I don't do anything, right? Like if you say, I just stand there, right? Like I don't really do anything, and I don't really want to stand either, right? I want to sit because I'm getting old and it hurts my feet, but my team likes it when I stand.
A Diet Coke.
Yeah, there's a ton of things I would much rather be doing.
I think I've told my assistants a few times when we're playing, is he going to do anything, or is he just going
to? Yeah. So it's funny, like when you say, "Hey, my team doesn't look at me," I'm like, "Why would they?" Right? Like,
why would they?
Like they've moved on, Tom. They've moved on, right? They're
That's amazing.
There's no point, right? So practice for me has gone away from this prescriptive mechanics. Hey, we're going to coach you in these mechanics kind of thing. I mean, there's some guardrails around it, right? Like there's some optimal way to do some things. But I think a big part of practice for me right now is, I mean, Rob Gray's got this perception action thing, right? That's his deal there. And hey, what you see has a big bearing on how you're going to respond, right? And so my role, I think, is to try and couple stuff, right? Like, hey, what did you see that made you respond that way? And hey, confirm, right? That's good. Or like, hey, have you thought about it in this other way, sort of thing? And so that's been the feedback mechanism for there. And so what's been wonderful for me in that space is that I think it's more standing alongside them, trying to find solutions rather than in front of them, telling them what they need to do, And I think in the coaching world, there's an enormous amount of prescriptive coaching going on, right? That it's just, practice without variability looks good, right? But matches have an enormous amount of variability around them, and now we get frustrated, right? Because our team's not playing well. But hey, we can do this in practice. Yeah, well, because you've not introduced the randomness and the variability that's going on, And so then giving your athletes the freedom to kind of explore that space is been really quite revolutionary for me. And they create these solutions at times, and I think that's one of the things, like, who am I to put guardrails around their solution finding? Like they may find a solution that's better than anything I've ever thought of, and how cool is that, right? That's remarkably cool that they're in that space. What we're finding is that it's really hard for athletes to do that because they're really afraid to do that because they're coming out of this prescriptive culture where they're not allowed to do that kind of stuff, right? Like the coach is the gatekeeper to everything, and I don't want to be that way. And Tom and I've had a lot of conversations about that, and especially this prescriptive stuff, right? Like, hey, how do we coach in that space, And I think he's challenged me in that space quite a bit, Yeah, there are moments where he's like, do it, be prescriptive, do it, And I'm like, I can't.
And you are.
Yeah, and I am, right?
You don't want to admit it, but you are.
I just won't admit it, but I'm like,
Because you have to be a little bit upfront, right? Because there has to be an understanding of what you're working towards.
His skin is crawling. I mean, gosh, if you're listening to this, you got to watch the video. Don't listen. Just watch Jason Watson's face right now.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with sure.
Skin is crawling.
the answer to that, yeah, my gosh, like I'm just so uncomfortable right now. Like, I don't want to be, but I think I have to be, and that's where the internal rage comes through right now.
Jason's on bridge.
Yeah, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, do
But
I?
like
Yeah,
I wasn't good at setting when I got to UW. I didn't know what I was really doing, and
that's not
so
true. That's not
no,
true.
I imagine me coming. No, Tom's like confirmed. Plus 4 years confirmed. But if you have someone coming in, it's like, yeah, just problem solve, figure it out. Like there's got to be some, obviously. Hey, this is
But
what
you
we're
did,
working
right? You
towards.
did problem solve.
I
Because if you
did,
didn't, you
but I
wouldn't
was,
be where you are today.
yeah, for sure. But there was also, hey, this is what I want your footwork to look like. This is what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's some macros that
Yeah,
need to be put in place, right?
yeah,
That needs to be. But then I wasn't in your gym, but I worked as an assistant for Jim, so I have some kind of understanding of what that gym would look like.
yeah,
It probably evolved and got better because Jim evolves and gets better,
yeah.
like better than most coaches I know, right? He is phenomenal in that space. But I imagine once those macros were put in, then you were in a space that was pretty random and that there was an incredible amount of variability. And then most of the
Absolutely.
conversations were centered around, hey, why did you make that choice? And hey, here's a better choice and here's a better solution. And there's some things like that. So, and so your experience in that gym, and I'm assuming some things, right, is probably a little less prescriptive than most,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're totally right. He
And
was
I had a few
trained so
thoughts
much more.
there without just a few thoughts. I mean, I just want to point out, just as a coach, I mean, I can attest to the level Jason's at. I mean, he's in a rare air, and he just is. And I love how he said, "Who am I to tell the athletes? They might
Yeah, it's
surprise
so
me."
cool.
And that level of curiosity is so rare. And the more that's why he is where he's at. And all of us need to learn from that. Just that he wouldn't keep seeing the game the way he's seen it. He wouldn't be able to teach. He wouldn't be able to evolve if he didn't have that mentality. I just think it's so special, and I've really learned from that a lot. The thing I would just two more quick points. Okay, prescriptive feedback. Okay, we want to be John Kessel would always say we want to be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, and I like that a lot. We want to help guide them, but I wouldn't say for me like prescriptive feedback is not even the worst. It's not ideal, but it's not like the thing that drives me up the wall is the prescriptive scattershot feedback. I'm going to prescriptively talk to you about this. Now 20 minutes later, I'm going to prescriptively talk to you about something else. And then by the end of the practice, maybe I see that I've seen this a lot. And one more disclaimer. I know like we get on these podcasts, like some coaches do that. When I hear other people talk like that, you don't know what I'm doing. Get out of here. So I'm not trying to throw daggers, but my daughter's in the club world and obviously I recruit and stuff. And
Yeah.
I know we're all trying and this job's hard. But if I give you 5 to 7 pieces of prescriptive feedback in random sequence and none of them are correlated and that's all you get in practice, like I just want to break something. I don't know.
do it.
I just don't know how you get better. And I think
Yeah.
that makes a player more fragile and looking to the coach than constant prescriptive feedback. Because if you're giving me consistent prescriptive feedback and at least there's like a methodology to how you're doing it, I can relax a little bit in the rhythm of it and the consistency of it. But if you're telling me how to do 5 things and they're not correlated and I don't know when they're going to come and I don't know if you're going to say it again and I don't even know what it means, but that's the only feedback I get from you, how do I not constantly look back to you? Because I don't know what the rules are. I don't know what the platform is. And that to me is the worst. The illogical, randomized, scattershot prescriptive feedback. And so like when we talk about, hey, Jason's doing like this, but Carl would do it different, or Jim McLaughlin, who's one of the best teachers I've ever met in my life, is like, yeah, there was times Jim's as prescriptive as anyone, you're right, but he also had a great feel of when you need to read the game, make decisions. But like what I see with all these, I can think of some other coaches, Mick Haley, like I don't know how philosophically aligned we were at all, but he was a great coach. But what I see with these people is consistency. And now like all consistency can't be equal, for sure.
Yeah.
But there was a consistency, and the players could relax on the rules of that gym, and that coach. So, like if I was gonna throw a spike at anything, it would be just the this makes no sense why you're saying this. I don't know when it's coming, and you're commanding me. So, that's the thing I would really advise against.
Yeah, I love that. When we used to use a model at Finding Mastery of like mind, behavior, performance. So mindset drives behavior. Sorry, thoughts drive behavior. Behavior drives performance. And I think young coaches or early coaches, it's often like they coach the performance after the fact. So you miss a serve low, it's like, oh, keep your elbow up, or drive like after the serve. It's like, yeah, no shit, that was low. It's in the net.
Yeah. But I don't want to just hammer on young coaches. I mean,
No, I'm not hammering. I'm saying like
no.
A level up would be you're coaching the behavior before the fact to get the performance you want. But what you guys are touching on is really like the mindset or the thoughts ahead of time. Hey, we're in this together. Let's figure this out. What are you going to do here? Ooh, why'd you do that? Like using curiosity to get these behaviors over time so that they can perform in like hard environments. So I'm not knocking anyone. I just think it's
no. I'm not saying you were. I'm sorry. But I see this. I just see it across age. Like I don't see a correlation to how old the coach is and that kind of random. I'm saying random in the worst possible way, like that random prescriptive feedback. It's I mean, I see it celebrated on social media all the time. There's just all these clips of it, like as if it's like, let's celebrate. And I'm like, oh man, my umbrage is coming out, Jason.
Yeah, you just did that to trigger me. I know you did that. I just know. I look, coaching isn't TikTok. That's the thing. Like.
Although you are trending on TikTok, Jason. Tom, I don't know if you heard this.
No, what's going on?
A clip of his whiteboard. I got a text from our social media person at Love, and she was like, Jason Watson got us trending on TikTok. And I was like, that is a sentence I never thought I would see.
Trendsetter. Are you on TikTok? Are you on TikTok, Jason?
My career is, I'm done. I'm trending on TikTok.
That's right.
There's nothing more.
Jason Watson, influencer.
Coachable. Like that's it. Like I'm good. I'm out. I think for coaches of any level, like practice planning should be a really big deal. And you should spend an enormous amount of time. And I think that Tom and I are fortunate in that we have time to be able to invest in our practice plans, right? And there's a ton more coaches that, like high school coaches, right? They're grading papers, doing some stuff, and then they get to practice, and club coaches have got jobs and things, and then they get to practice, right? And so it's really easy for them to, hey, this is the practice that we're going to do, and because we don't have time to prep, and now we're reactive to what's going on in practice rather than planned, and so their coaching prep is a lot harder than ours, in that space. But one of the things I would say is, what's the point of practice, and for us, I think for the student athlete, right, I think the point of practice is, hey, I'm going to give an enormous amount of effort. I'm going to have a great attitude, and I'm going to be the best teammate I can be, right? And if you achieve those three things in a practice, then that's a good practice, right? And because the effort's going to help you with learning and things like that, right? And my job is to put them in the best possible position to go be better, to win the moment that they're going to be in when they play, right? And our goal is not to win the set or the match. That should not be the goal. Our goal is to win the moment that we're in. And I think if we start thinking about practices as trying to get our athletes better at winning moments, then we're going to keep them present. We're going to allow them to experience some disappointment, but be able to move on and respond and be resilient and maybe even brave, and so that's, I think, a really healthy way to look at practice. Like we're trying to get you, Court, right, to win the moment that you find yourself in, and then acknowledge the fact that not every moment is the same moment. Like moments, they change, right? Every moment. And my job is to be incredibly consistent in those moments, right? Like I'm not going to lose my mind, but that works for my personality, right? Like as Tom alluded to, like I look completely apathetic during matches.
Is it hard to?
It's
No, it's
incredibly
not
hard.
hard. No, it's not. You are like when you're already thinking about practice. You're like,
That's so
That's true.
good.
That's true. That's true. I'm like, we didn't do that in practice, right? Like, I got to be better in practice, sort of thing. That's some of the stuff. But yeah, like
I love that, Jason.
It's amazing.
And there's so many questions of how do we prep for these quote unquote big moments or these charged moments for the athletes, and it's such an eloquent and simple way to approach that. Is like, no, every moment is an opportunity to show up fully and be you, problem solve. And if we do that day to day, we have access to that in these moments. So cool.
And I'm ripping on Jason's apathy, but
you should absolutely rip on my
and I will, and I won't relent on that point. But
I'd be disappointed if you did.
But he's just so observant because he's so curious. I mean, he's just taking it all in without judgment, and then it's just an incredible thing that I think all of us would want to emulate a little bit more. It's just I love that about him.
We kind of touched on feedback briefly, and I want to marry the two. How do you guys think about feedback and timeouts, considering everything you've just said?
I can't stand timeouts. I wish we'd get rid of them.
I figured.
They just grind on me, like, and they're like 90 seconds long, and
they're too long.
It's like, oh my gosh, right? Like
we have like 20 of them internationally. There's so many timeouts.
Yeah,
so
and
many
then you've
moments
got
to talk.
challenges, and then you throw in like just get rid of them. Like just like maybe have one at media timeout at some point in time, but then just get rid of the rest of them. Like
I actually do think I think for the fan experience we should get rid of some of them. Actually.
Yeah, just all of them. Just get rid of all of them. Like just all of them. Just don't change sides. Like 90 seconds between sets. Like just let's go. Right? Nobody.
I mean, I'm in.
Like, I will. I mean,
I can't stand them. So
I don't want to stop the rant.
That's not the answer to your question.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're mid rant, I apologize. Keep going.
You saved me from making this podcast explicit.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. I do think there's like how there's like wartime leaders and peacetime leaders, and I think timeouts are kind of like that too. I do think there's the occasional like wartime timeout where, I mean, this player will not respond unless you emotionally recheck them, and this team needs clear directions to get back in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think those timeouts probably feel the best, but I think it's 5% of the time, and I think there's a lot of peacetime timeouts where it's like, man, we're just playing the game. This is unnecessary, and there's coaches who can really fill up that time. I'm jealous. What are they? I mean, I'm really jealous. I don't know what to talk. I mean, serve here, hit this person. Are we good? I think that's like 90% of timeouts. And I will say, I mean, I think I'm really bad in this space, but I'm a little bit better than Jason. I think Jason kind of does a little fist bump, like, come on. And I can see he's stuck for the next 87 seconds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really true, but it's really true. I got an email from a season ticket holder who just ripped me because of my timeouts. Like,
shut up.
Like you're not even talking to the team. You're not pumping them up. And what I wanted to respond was, and?
Oh my.
Like, and, right? And
so good.
And so I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Like for the first 30 seconds, right? They're just trying to get a drink. They're trying to find their seat and they're trying to get a drink. They're not paying attention to anything that you say, right? They're not. And I'm like, well, what is there to say, right? And so
just imagine Jason's team like looking at him and him going, what?
What are you looking at me for?
I'm sure that's happened.
That's happened a lot, right? That's happened a lot.
So good.
But I think some of my timeouts are just reassuring them, like, hey, listen, you guys, we've been here before. Like, what we're going to go do. Like, hey, maybe just confirm one or two things because I feel obligated to confirm them because it's a timeout, But I mean, I don't know. And there's there's zero correlation between a timeout and the impact on the next play after the timeout.
And that's been proven. That's proven.
Yeah, there's no correlation, right? And so Any coach that's like, hey, that's timeouts on me. It's like, okay, well, what about the other
Yeah.
900 that weren't? Like,
Yeah. Fair.
get over
Jason, do you
yourself.
remember that story when the marketing team went with you on your road trip and you felt like you had to perform in the timeout?
Yeah,
Remember that?
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
I really did. Like they're in the timeout, right, with the camera, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I better do
Yeah,
something
do
that
something.
gives
And
them
then
some content, right?
your player asked you what the hell you're doing because
Yeah,
you were talking so much.
Oh my God.
just playing up to the camera, court. It's like the team is like, what is
Who's
your
this guy?
problem?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
and but yeah, so there's a message there, right? Like, be true to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Don't. But I was trying to play up for like, oh boy,
So
better
good.
do something, and like TV asked to come into our locker room before a game, right, for our motivational speech, and I'm
Oh
like,
God.
that's going to be the worst 13 seconds of television ever produced. Like, there's no point. There's no point.
All right, I have two more big questions in our time here, but I want to ask, how do you think video is most helpful for your athletes? And if you were coaching club, how might you use it?
Boy,
Just one at a time, not both of you. Take it easy here. This
Jason, go
seems like a
first.
question you guys are excited about. Just
No,
dead ass silence.
I think about this a lot. I know Jason
Okay.
does too.
Okay.
okay, so we're going to define a video as video feedback and video demonstration, right? Video
Mm-hmm.
feedback being the traditional delivery of video where you and I sit in the room and we watch you perform, okay? Video demonstration would be you and I sit in a room and we find an athlete that we like, who has mechanics and decision making, and we watch that together and we critique, or hey, watch that person, see what they do. All right, today in practice, go mirror that person, sort of thing. So I think if I was coaching a 14s team, I would use video demonstration almost exclusively, to again create a picture in their mind of what the skill should look like. And young athletes, or maybe not learners, let's say learners, are probably pretty good at taking a visual representation and going and mirroring it. Like, everyone mirrors their favorite athlete, right, in some way, right? And they've never been taught that, and so there's some power to that sort of thing. The problem with video feedback at times is that whatever happens in that particular practice that you're watching, that athlete has captured the emotional baggage in there, right? And so no matter how positive you are in that film session, right, they're waiting for you to say, but, and we know, right, nothing you say before but matters, and
Sure.
and so they're waiting for that. And look, some kids just don't want to watch themselves on film. They hate it, right? It's just really uncomfortable for them. So don't meet them in that space. Don't meet them in that space. I watch a tremendous amount of film only to make sure that we're in the right place and to give, so that my feedback to the athlete is actionable, right? Like, hey, yesterday in practice you were doing this. I got to get them going to this. So I'm going to make sure that that's one of their things on their SAP board or something like that. So
Yeah.
we do push clips to them of really good things that they've done, right? That maybe is on their to-do list, and hey, this was on your to-do list. I know you've been working really hard on it. Look at this play, right? You're seeing a great return on it. So we use video in that way, to acknowledge improvement rather than to motivate through, here are all the ways in which you're doing it wrong.
Right.
That doesn't work. It doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I love that. Tom, I think not to bring it back to me, but one of the things that was helpful, I think I probably played my best ever in 2014. I felt the most free. I felt the most in control and in all the ways, but I would watch kind of a compilation that Trinzy made for me of like, it was just how I wanted to feel that way when I was setting. So I was aggressive, I was in rhythm, and I would watch that before every match, and I found it super helpful.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, you had a little highlight reel going on, and that's kind of thing. I don't know if I don't want to really give an answer to this more than just like different perspectives. Like I agree with what Jason was saying about video demonstrations. I would personally like to have all levels. Like, so if I had a 14-year-old, I'd like to have 14-year-olds doing it. I'd like to have pro players doing it. I'd like to have college players doing it. I think I would spend a little bit more time on the 14-year-old, how they're doing it, but I would like to have a little bit of a lighthouse Like just, and I wouldn't watch 20 clips of a pro player, but I wouldn't mind having like 2 clips. Like this
Yeah.
is like one day,
Yeah.
but then just go back. So I agree with that. I think in practice video, over the years, I've done a lot less like real time, like with the loop in practice video, but this is totally anecdotal, but I still think at the right time, it's highly effective. And that's just from teams where I've had it, teams where I haven't had it, teams where I didn't have it and was able to get it mid-season. I think there's a time and a place. I don't think it's like a lot, but I do think there's a time for a player to check on the loop and they can get a lot out of it. But you got to be careful with it. You definitely don't want it to be a crutch, for sure. But I think it's better than not having it. I like pushing clips out. I think if I could tell myself anything like 20 years ago from now, I think video, like it's a little bit like weightlifting or kind of like eating your vegetables or something. It's like you don't have to do it very long, but you have to do it, in my opinion. Like I don't think there's any great player who's not consistently watching video. I don't think you have to do it for an hour. I think 5 to 10 minutes a day is a huge return, but I think you have to do it, and I don't think many players do it. I think watching video has become, I think we talk about it so often, we assume people do it, and they just don't. And I think the athlete that does it versus not is massive. And I think the goal, just another obvious thing, like whether you have volumetrics or huddle, I think it's a good feedback loop. Like, what kind of conversations am I having with my team on that app? Like, are they asking me good questions? Do I have to drag them to watch it? Like what kind of things are we talking about? Are we talking about higher level things this week than we were last week? Again, that kind of random scattershot thing I was talking about. Like, Are we guiding towards the concept, or is it like I'm talking about this, now I'm talking about that? I think that's if we can kind of be objective about what's happening in that space. That's a space that should be used. And, I think some teams use it better than others, right? So I don't really, I'm just kind of throwing perspectives at it, but I think video matters. I don't think you have to do it all day long. I think you have to do it. And I don't think that would be like the biggest low hanging fruit to improve a player, is like actually do it every day. But you don't have to do it very long, but you have to do it. And you have to be looking for something. Like, try to be looking for the same thing until you're ready to move on to the next,
I love that, because there's so much, there's so many things we can learn from video, of like even just learning how to learn, receiving feedback, being objective, not being overly emotional. Like, there's so many nuances there. And it's such an accelerator.
I think Tom uses it like really well for this checking for understanding, right? That he's looking to confirm, there's some understanding with the athletes, and I think that's pretty powerful, right? That's a really powerful feedback loop for him and his staff. I think he does that really well. I don't do that as well, and so I don't. And so every time he tells me that, right? Like I spent a couple of days at Georgia with them, and this checking for understanding through that video, and I was like, just dang it, like I got to be better in that space, right? I'm like, and so, but I think he and his staff do a remarkable job of that, and so that, probably guides some practices, probably guides some pretty intentional conversations with these athletes with that check for understanding. So, and I haven't gotten any better at it, Tom. So I'm still working on it. So,
room to improve, baby. Jason, there was when Tom was coaching me on the USA team.
I was just thinking some stories.
We would be training, 4 hours in the sweltering heat of Anaheim.
Oh yeah.
And we would meet for video in the gym, and I'm like, training. I'm trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to do this thing, and we'd open the computer, and then Tom would just crack open a nice cold Diet Coke.
I was the coach
every day, and I'd just be like, this asshole. I'm right here.
Different roles.
Oh, so good. Are you good on time if we go like 10 more minutes?
Great.
Okay.
I actually have a question for you. Like was it 2014? You were like, hey, this is what got you there? Like, what led up to that? Because I think that's a pretty significant thing that you can share with athletes. Like, what made that your best year?
A lot of messing it up, I think, or like trying to be something more external, coupled with just like mechanically. I think there was like a shift of where I was getting better, and then it was like, oh, I can feel myself like a decade of efforting, and it's kind of coming to this moment of like, oh, this is what I do now, in a different way, and I think physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that kind of lined up. I feel like I'm saying nothing, but probably it was the belief for the first time that I could be me and use my strengths on the world stage, and it was enough. So it was the first time I felt like I did at UW on the world stage. And it was like, oh, I don't give a shit about anything else. This is us. This is what we're going to do. This is how I help my team, and it's good enough. And
Let me throw some external factors I observed on you that were kind of interesting.
Okay.
So you had a silver medal under your belt, but you had it under an extreme amount of personal pressure on you. So, I'm wondering if there was an effect of like some evidence that you could do this with a lot of the pressure that had been on you, like kind of taken off. You're like a little bit able to be more free as a person.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I'm not saying this is right. I want you to respond.
That feels
to this.
true.
I remember you had two big wins as a starting setter in a 5-1 against gigantic teams. Like I remember when you beat Russia in Montreux, Switzerland. And I remember sitting on the bench, and I wanted that game so bad for you because they were trees, And if Courtney Thompson, if you could run a 5-1 against Russia and win, I just thought that would be so significant for you. Yeah, because like everyone was a foot taller than you. And then the other thing, I remember like you and I had been like really in the ditches at that point, and I was obviously like crazy technical, really technical, really like and then I wasn't there for World Championships, but Marv was there, who's like complete opposite coach as me, like complete, very little technique, very much emotional belief. And there's that contrast of like when you dive in the technique and then when you get released of it, kind of like when you're in the pressure of London and then you get released of it. And, again, I don't have an answer to this. I'm just throwing this at you. Like how much did all of that converge into like the sweet spot of, is there anything to that? Or like I've actually always wondered that. So I appreciate Jason asking.
Yeah. No, I would.
Am I making sense at all with that? Or?
Yeah, to me, yeah. I would agree with all of that. I had the worst year of my career and life, Jason, the year after the London Olympics. And I was going to quit, like all these things. I was just over it. And Tom was in the trenches with me through that, which was really cool. And I would articulate it, Tom, like you and I, you would hold space for whatever emotions I was in, and then lovingly but efficiently get to like, what do you want to do? What are we going to do about it? Like genuinely. And it was super helpful for me to like, okay, these are the things I can control, and almost black and white about it. And I felt like that year and a half that it started clicking, I was chasing performance before of like, I got to play well for my team. I want them to know I'm here for them, blah, blah, blah. And you and I kind of got to this, for me, it was like under that of like, what are the things that, let's chase the experience or the feeling or the things we can actually control, and let's see what happens. And there was curiosity. And yeah, so I think that charged with this like slow self-belief of being me in harder moments.
And then do you feel like your relationship with Marv kind of like for that moment kind of like let you really play free? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been the same if you were there. I do think Marv has a cool way of bringing perspective, and like, I mean, I even remember we had video with him and we watched 3 plays. He goes, well, they're going to do one of 3 things. I think we're good here. We're like, what?
That's phenomenal.
We're in the quarterfinals of World Championships. And, so there's like beautiful things like that where he's just like, you got it.
Yeah.
But you made me feel the same way. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
But to me, it's what I hope most for athletes is like, and you guys do this so beautifully, but how do we help them feel like they can be all of them in any moment? And there's nothing better. And World Champs was just the first time that I was like, oh, cool, I can just be me. So.
That is sorely needed, and I'm not in any way saying I'm a poster child for that, but like what you just said there, Court, man, if we can take anything from that, I mean, again, it's just so sorely needed. I feel like on these, when we talk about coaching on podcasts, social media and stuff, like that's all is ever getting talked about. Like it's about the athletes but I'm telling you, man, it's not enough. There's so many kids who need that. That's a great message.
Yeah. What are you, I guess, to wrap up, although I could do this for hours, and since it's so early in the morning, Tom, we have hours.
Not for me.
Yeah, I asked you both this when you guys were on individually, but just what is one thing you would really love to see kind of in youth volleyball? I know there's a million things to talk about there. I like throwing loaded questions in at the end and just seeing what happens.
One of the most fun recruiting trips I went on last year was to Big South, and I didn't recruit a single athlete for Arkansas. I just watched Tom's daughter play in was it 12s, I think?
No, it was 11 and under.
11s. It was 11. Better,
Did
right?
she like
Just
throw
like
any
11.
tables like Tom, or like how did
I just saw this classic. Jason and I were sitting watching 11 under match, and all the college coaches like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, just kind of.
We work harder. We work harder. It just means more, Tom. It just
Right,
means more. And we work harder than everyone else because we're at the 11th court, you know.
We got plenty of looks.
Not even standing, sitting on chairs.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
that
sitting.
invested, right? We're that invested. And so, you know, my daughter's older now. She went through some club stuff and didn't play in college and things like that. And okay, let's not take the growth of our sport for granted. Let's continue to work and be better. You know, these athletes that are coming to our sport, I don't think are coming because of coaching. They're coming because they see a game that is now readily more available to them to see than it's ever been before, you know. Yeah. And Court, your organization are doing an amazing job, you know, like from grassroots, if that's a term, to pro, right? And so let's not take that growth for granted, because at some point in time, there'll be some other sport that becomes a lot more fun for them to do. And it'll be a lot more fun for them to do because they'll get to do it, and there won't be these gatekeepers of the experience that are telling them that they can't do something until they're mechanically efficient or something like that, right? Like, don't reward your athletes with playing the game after you've, you know, like the last 10 minutes of practice you get to go play. That's not cool. They love the game. Like you can motivate athletes pretty easily if you just let them go do the thing that they love, you know, and get out of their way there a little bit, you know, and not get in the weeds so much. I wish we would do that a little bit more. And I think some of the issues that we're seeing, right, where you know, athletes are wanting to be coached as people, you know, then we may be able to solve some of that if we just kind of get out of their way there a little bit. And I think the sport, while it's growing, is in a really tenuous position because, like, it could take off, right? It could just absolutely take off and be this incredibly dominant sport in the United States, or we could lose our edge because, you know, the grown-ups get in the way, you know, and that would be a real detriment, you know, to the work that a lot of good people are doing to try and create a platform for our sport to grow. So coaching isn't hard. Like, coaching really isn't that difficult, you know. Coaching people is really, really difficult, right? And so most of the stuff that we do, to Tom's point, right, I think is really valid here, right? That we talk about coaching people all the time, and then we never coach them, you know, like we talk about it, you know, but then we don't do anything about it. And so coaching, you know, however you want to go coach, but coaching people is really challenging, I think.
Well, like, what I'm excited about the growth of the sport. I'm excited about how many people I see when I'm recruiting parents, coaches, and players, where I'm like, man, these are really great people, and our sport is growing, and they're in the sport. So there's somewhere we can really go. I think my concern, I feel like we're going in 50 different directions in this country. So I feel like we're growing like crazy, but I feel like there's no central direction, and there's no guiding philosophy. And I think there was for a long period of time that got us here. You know, I can use Carl as an example. I think he was the central figure in the growth of our sport. I think there was thousands of coaches who kept swearing, I don't do anything Carl does, but they absolutely did. And I think the evidence is the game. You know, the evidence is the proof's in the pudding. I mean, there's a way the USA played volleyball, and as much as we were kicking and screaming our feet about that, and I feel like that's really gone right now. So that just worries me. The combination, like the lack of the direction with the crazy growth. I wish there was a central direction with that, but you know, we'll figure that out as a sport. This isn't the problem, but again, I'm just going to go this one more time and I'll drop it. But there's so much social media out there about coaching, which is in some ways is cool because that points to the growth of the sport. So there's a lot of people who think they can get some value filming themselves coaching, you know, and which again, that's to the point as well. Like, they think, no, seriously, and I don't mean that that way, but they think they can monetize this because the sport is big enough and there's enough people who see value in that, and that wouldn't have happened 10, 20 years ago, right? So so I think my the challenge I would add is, is what we're saying really happening. So I'd like to see more consistency from us as coaches in terms of the quality of our feedback. I'd like to see more care from us as coaches in the detail of our practice plans. This stuff isn't going to be on social media, and I'd like to see some more competition in practice in the way that really matters in terms of players there. And I'm not talking about pitting players against each other. I'm talking about these kids are here to play and compete and see how they can grow from it and make sure the majority of our practices are from that. And the last thing, I want to add, because I feel like I'm slamming and I don't mean to, because I'm a coach. I'm in this and I'm trying to get better too. I'm just going to give him a shout out, but I was recruiting the other day and I had a long talk with a coach from Munciana, Mike Lingenfelter, who's a great player and he's been there a long time. And I found myself getting really emotional talking to him because this guy has been around forever. And he's ripping himself in terms of how he coached his team the match before. And he's statting the other team and trying to get a scouting report together in 30 minutes. And he's talking about players from the past 30 years he's coaching. And he's getting emotional. And you can tell how much this guy cares. And I'm just looking at it. And I remember thinking, thank God this guy is still coaching. Thank God. How many – there are hundreds of girls whose lives are being improved because of Mike Lingenfelter. And that's what we all want to be. And I know there's so many people like that doing great work. But, my short answer, if there was a way I could write 5 bullet points of what he made me feel in terms of coaching and how much more energized I was after and how much more inspired I was and grateful that his players were playing for him, because that's what I want my daughter playing for. So, in the end, that's kind of what we're shooting to be like.
Well, I love you both. You guys make me want to be better every time we talk. You're a blast to hang out with. And I feel just very grateful for what you guys are doing for our sport. And grateful that we get to hang out. So thank you for taking the time again. If you guys want to be co-hosts, we can keep this going. You just let me know.
That's too much work.
Coffee with the gentleman.
Can
but
we
no,
do it
seriously.
no prep? No prep, no work, maybe.
Yeah, surprisingly,
That's right.
we didn't do any prep for this.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in to Beyond the Court. And thanks to our guests, Jason Watson and Tom Black, for joining us today. Make sure to hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss the next episode. And to learn more about League One Volleyball, follow us on Instagram at LOVB. In the meantime, keep working hard, having fun, and go on and spread the love today. All right, we'll see you next time.